So I wanted to take this terrible drawing I made of a potion room and turn it into something less awful, but I basically had no idea what I was doing. So here's how that went. I started by cutting out a base from a sheet of insulation foam, which I wanted to act as the floor of the room, so I cut in a grid-like pattern. And as you can see, straight lines are my passion. To give it a nice worn-in floor look, I figured I could make some cracks and divots. And to make extra sure that it had that nice broken look, I just put a crack in all the way across the floor. I found that if I used a thick metal ruler, I could make the floor tiles look more tile-y. And then I got resourceful and used some foil to add some extra wear and tear. For paint, I started with a Mod Podge and paint mix. I think this gives it a more uniform surface for the other paint. I've just seen other people doing it, so I also did it. Then it was this gray paint and then a lighter gray paint, and then on to my favorite part, the dry brushing. This somehow always manages to take my terrible painting skills and almost makes them look okay-ish. Then I took some homemade dark wash and used it to emphasize the beautiful cracks and blemishes. Moving on to the back, I tried a handful of things to get a cobblestone texture, but ultimately I just pulled out my new hot knife thing and did it by hand, which kind of took a while, so let's speed it up. And then I just repeated the same weathering and painting process as before. I tried to use some dark wash on the back, but I must have done something wrong, so I just added some to the bottom too to make it look like it was intentional, which it definitely was. And then I glued the bottom and the back together. Then it was time to cut out the foam planks for the table, but I broke the blade, which, come to think of it, also happened in the last video. Maybe I need to be less heavy-handed or something. I'm sure it's fine. Then once I had them cut out, they still needed some help looking like wood, so I added some texture with my X-Acto knife. And I glued them together. And did the same thing for the legs, but stumpier. Then some side pieces that'll be helpful later. I took the whole thing and slathered it in a coat of black paint that I then covered in brown paint, and success! I now had a way better than expected wooden table. For my next trick, I chopped some balsa wood up and glued that together to make a shelf. I actually made use of the dark wash this time to stain the wood a darker color, and I glued that to the background. I decided to make a couple smaller shelves with some metal brackets on them. Honestly, this is mostly just because I wanted to use the platinum paint that I bought though, don't tell anyone. And I stuck those on the shelf next to the larger one, leaving me with a nice empty looking room of wood and fake wood, so I figured it was time to fill the place up. This meant breaking out the clay, which I basically had zero non-Play-Doh experience with, but I'd seen a bunch of YouTubers doing it, so what could go wrong? A lot. I made some fangs with translucent clay, and then used the same clay to make a couple of sciencey looking glass piece things that didn't turn out great. And then I made a crystal looking thing that I apparently forgot to film, and after I baked, painted, and dry brushed that, it kinda looked like a magical crystal, which is more than I can say for the glassware. And then I placed the items on the shelves. While doing that, I accidentally broke the flask thing, but that's fine because I can make that look planned by adding some red paint to the area around it. The shelf still looked like it had some space, so I decided to add some ingredients in there as well. Now for the other shelves, I wanted to make some books. I got those painted in a variety of colors. And I added some little lines for some extra detail. And I stacked those on the shelves in an intentionally unintentional looking fashion. Then it was finally time to make the cauldron, and if you thought I struggled with the clay before, naturally I started with some foil, and then some more foil when I underestimated it the first time, and cut a hole in it for the electronics later. I rolled out some clay to put around the foil, but I'm an idiot and didn't expect it to stick to the table, so I had to do it again. On foil this time. But after all that, I was actually able to start shaping the clay. For the opening, I just kind of kept pinching and adding clay until it looked more like a bag or a coin purse or something. But that's when I decided to pull out the shaper tools that I had zero idea how to use. This ball tool kind of helped, but still wasn't quite what I wanted. So I brought out the silicone tip tools. The first one didn't help really. The second one looked to be doing something, but then it broke off. Not my fault this time, probably. At first it didn't feel like that was doing much either, but I just kept going anyway and it turned out pretty decent. I also realized I could use it to make a little dip between the base and the rim to help look less like a bag. And then I just went around bulking out some spots that looked uneven with more clay. Moving on to the inside now, I used some clay and the little pokey tool I had to give the surface of the liquid a nice bubbly texture that you won't end up seeing in the final product because it's covered up by other stuff, but at least we know it's there. And I realized I didn't like the shape of the rim because I'll never be satisfied, so I broke out the shaper tool thing again and touched everything up. I also tried out my little metal scraper loop thing. I should probably learn the names of this stuff, which helped get the clay more even, I think. Next came the isopropyl rubbing alcohol to smooth everything out. I found that I could kind of slap the clay like it was the like button with this brush and rubbing alcohol to get a cast irony texture. And after a quick bake, there it was. Then came the layer of black paint, which I pulled off flawlessly. And the soon-to-be invisible green paint. And some dry brushing to bring out the bumps and scratches. With that done, I had to figure out where it would go on the table so that I could cut a hole for the wires. For lighting, I grabbed a few LED bulbs and attached those to batteries, which was probably really unsafe, so don't do that. But I was just using them for the initial setup and will probably replace them with pre-assembled lights later on. Or maybe I'll learn how to solder someday. I used more electrical tape to put these in place once I figured out where I wanted them. To make the smoke, I decided to go with cotton. I've seen people use other methods to varying degrees of success, but I wanted to test this one out. I tried a few different methods of painting the cotton, and they all kind of sucked. Except the last one where I just kind of lightly dabbed and rolled the paint onto them. And by the end, I had a little graveyard of ruined cotton, so a moment of silence, if you will. And then I just had to shape it all into a big tendrily blob and get it situated on top of the cauldron. Before we take a look at the finished piece, I wanted to say that I had a lot of fun making this project and I learned so much in the process that I can apply next time, so subscribe for more like this. And thank you so much for being a part of my journey. Here's the piece.